ayes 61, nays 6, excused 1.
Senate Bill 17, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct.
Senate Joint Resolution 502, applying to the United States Congress for a convention of the states to propose amendments to the United States Constitution regarding the imposition of fiscal restraints on the federal government, furthering limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limiting the terms of office for members of Congress and other federal officials.
Senate Joint Resolution 502, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Heineman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What everyone's been waiting for all afternoon, right? Members of the House, the resolution before you is about restoring our federal system by using our constitutional power under Article 5. Senate Joint Resolution 502 is an application to the U.S. Congress for a convention of states. It passed out of State Affairs 8-5. All of you have heard about this process last week. The complexity of the subject, however, requires an open mind, and I ask of you today. The last 4 years have been a wake-up call to demonstrate just how much power the president and federal government have taken from South Dakota and its citizens. I had a constituent email me the other day, and she put it so succinctly, and I quote, "While there are critical issues you should address specifically for South Dakota, it's equally pressing to tackle the challenges confronting our nation. Those in Washington, D.C. are unlikely to address these effectively due to the reluctance to diminish their own authority. An Article 5 convention to propose amendments can specifically focus on these areas where federal power has grown excessively and redirect control back to the states." End quote. You know, I don't think our founding fathers would be surprised that the federal government has claimed as much incredible power as they have. I don't think they really would be surprised at that. However, they would be surprised, I think, that if we have not used the tools that they gave us to help curb this. The call to convention is very specific. It takes 34 states to call, state legislatures, by the way, for the purpose of the call. That's a 2/3 majority. And it takes 38 states, a 3/4 majority, to ratify anything that comes out of the convention. That is a very high bar to achieve, I think. I ask you to vote yes on term limits, limited government, and fiscal restraint. I urge you to vote green for SJR 502. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further remarks on SJR 502. Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think, first of all, I think this is kind of redundant from last week because you did vote for term limits for an Article 5, but I will go through just a few things. I'm going to read Article 5, the part that applies. We talk about a lot. We talk about a lot about what it says, but I'm going to read what it actually says. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to read is how we've made our first 27 amendments to the Constitution. So Article 5, the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution. I'll stop there because now I'm going to talk about the second way, which is what we're talking about here today. Or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, plural, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by, and please note this word, conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. So Congress can actually propose that it be a convention as opposed to legislature. So anyway, keep that in mind. I'll go on and say, so we have proposed amendments and sent them to the states for ratification. This was done with our existing 27 amendments. And the second thing I just mentioned is we can call a convention for proposing amendments if 2/3 of the state legislatures apply for it. We have never had a convention under Article 5. We've never had one. But you are today being asked to do this. And the phrase within Article 5, a convention for proposing amendments, doesn't restrict the delegates to the convention to merely proposing amendments. Our Declaration of Independence recognizes that a people have the self-evident right to throw off their government and set up a new government. We've already invoked that right twice. In 1776, we invoked it to throw off the British monarchy, and in 1787, James Madison invoked it to throw off our first constitution, the Articles of Confederation, and set up a new constitution, the one we have now, which created a new government. So what happened at this convention? They found there were defects in the Articles of Confederation, so on February 21st, 1787, the Continental Congress called a convention to be held in Philadelphia. And what was the mandate? The mandate was for the sole and express purpose of revising the Articles of Confederation. But the delegates ignored the instructions from Congress and similar instructions from the states, and they wrote a new constitution which created a new form of government. Furthermore, the new Constitution had its own new mode of ratification. Whereas amendments to the Articles of Confederation had to be approved by the Continental Congress and all of the then 13 states, the new Constitution provided an article that would be ratified when only 9 states approved it. So we do have precedents on what happened when an Article 5, well, this was not an Article 5 convention because that actually came out of this Articles of Confederation, I'm sorry, the Continental Congress. I believe opening up the Constitution and using a sledgehammer when you want to make changes to Congress when they're not following the Constitution now, I think is foolhardy. I think that we are putting our Constitution at risk. We get all these, everyone says, oh, this isn't going to happen, this isn't going to happen, and they give all these examples. We don't know what's going to happen. Once you open up the Constitution and you open up an Article 5 convention, you have no idea what's going to happen. And I noticed that in this resolution, they have a bunch of things that, there's several things that it says here. It says Congress doesn't determine any rules. Congress does not set the number of delegates to be sent by the states. And it restrains Congress and says all this. The legislature reserves the right to provide instructions to the state delegates and may recall its delegates. Well, that's really interesting, except Congress doesn't believe that. Congress, after looking into this, said, while the Constitution is silent on the mechanisms of an Article 5 convention, Congress has traditionally laid claim to broad responsibilities in connection with the convention, including receiving, judging, and recording state applications, establishing procedures to summon a convention, setting the amount of time allotted to its deliberations, determining the number and selection process for its delegates, setting internal convention procedures, including formula for allocation of votes among the states, and arranging for the formal transmission of any proposed amendments to the states. I know this is long-winded. I know this is a lot of information. I'm going to wrap this up because this continues to come up. It came up last week. This esteemed body, passed term limits last week. But also in 2015, this body passed a balanced budget amendment. That was in 2015. So I know this is going to continue to come up. I'm going to continue to stand here as I have. And before I was a part of this body, I used to fight against this. I fought against this for 12 years because I feel like I'm standing up to protect our Constitution. Because once you open the Constitution to make these changes, who knows where it's going to go? We already know that California and Hawaii and other states are looking to make changes and bring their amendments. So I just ask you to resist this and please vote no. But ultimately, I believe that God is sovereign and whatever happens, it's part of his plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further remarks on SJR 502. Representative Duffy.
Thank you, Speaker. You just heard the detailed version, and any of you know me know that's not my long game. But here's what I'll tell you. I'm standing against this like I did last week. I do not want to open up that Constitution for any way, shape, or form. No constitutional convention. The reason I say that, I know the nation's in trouble. We owe $38 trillion. The last balanced budget was Bill Clinton. Let that sink in just for a second. That's who balanced the last budget, federal budget. Here's the reality. We have 900,000 people. We're a mid-sized suburb. California has 39 million, Texas got 30, Florida's got 25. They want representation. We have 2/100ths of the most selective deliberative body on the planet in the United States Senate. They don't think we should have any representation in that body at all. If this is opened up, you might think that we could keep it in the rails. Look at our own body. We can't, I mean, we disagree on a lot of things. So I don't believe at all that we can stop this. I believe if we're going to protect South Dakota's future, we're here for South Dakota. We all want the nation to do well. It's not going to live or die on what we decide. I will tell you that much. 900,000 people, we're like 0.3% of the population. They don't pay attention to us. Do I think our representation in the United States Senate works? I can only use, I've been in this state, I'm 66 years old, I've been here most all of my life. Here's the reality. We have always had strong representation in the Senate. We have things that most states don't have. We have $700 million airplanes. We have about 40 or 50 of them coming. They're the most advanced airplane on Earth, the B-21 Raider. Do you think that plane, I'll tell you who wants that airplane, and they may get it if we don't figure this out, is Texas. They already have, they're going to get some of these B-21s. We got them, and we know we got them. We got them for two reasons. One is we were able to open up the Powder River flight training area, which is North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, so they could train in that area. Second thing is we had representation.
Point of order. 1 second, Representative Duffy. Representative Jensen, state your point.
Yes. What has this got to do with COS?
Well, I think the representative is speaking to the issue of term limits and why perhaps he's opposed to term limits being included in this resolution.
You are right. I'm sorry. I'm speaking to the Convention of States, and maybe that's not appropriate. I'll just leave it at this. Look, South Dakotans understand struggle real well. Those of us, our families have stayed here. It's a lot of people have moved here now, but we've shipped a lot of people away. It's prosperity we seem to struggle with.
Thank you, Representative. Further remarks on HJR 502. Representative Rayfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I rise in support of this resolution, and I want to remind the body of what we discussed this last week, which is some safeguards that are in place. So the ultimate safeguard is that 38 states have to approve what is determined at convention and approve those changes. I think that's one of the most important things for us to remember. That is a lot of states that have to agree on all of these topics that we're talking about. The other piece that I really want to talk about is we can talk about being fearful of a convention process, but my question today is, why are we not fearful of what's going on in our country at this moment? I just Googled how much debt we have. In January 2025, the national debt is $36.2 trillion. You know what that equivalents to? $102,000 for every single one of us in this room. Every single one of us, every single citizen in the entire United States, $102,000. That's what we owe. That should make us fearful. That's a lot of money. Where do we come up with that? When does it stop? Now, thankfully, we have administration in place that should hopefully be working to get this debt down. But this is an opportunity for us to say, and us to take a stance, and us to have our voices heard about ways that we can decrease that debt. And that's not the only problem. Why do we have people serving for 59 years, 51 years, longer than I've been alive? How do you remain with your constituents as your priority when it becomes money over policy, over the concerns of your constituents? There are so many issues that we have to think about here. And I know that it's scary. There's a lot of things that are scary in our country, but I don't believe a convention is one of them, where we have people that care about our country coming together, trying to find solutions, trying to find an agreement that everyone can come back to, because you still have to have 38 states that come back and agree to those specific subjects and what the convention process comes up with. I ask you to put our country first, put our state first, and support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on HJR 502. Representative Rice.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I've been a John Bircher for about 30 years, and I study the Constitution all the time. And they are never for an Article 5. They teach the Constitution. They understand it better probably than I do, the people that belong to this organization. But I sent my kids to camps, and because we're not learning exactly everything in our schools and about our Constitution. It takes outside organizations and other places to dive into all the articles and all the, so amendments I think are great. And I think we do need an amendment, but I'm for letting our President Bush maybe make these amendments, get these. I think we passed that Article 5 for the other one, for the term limits, because I do believe in term limits, but we also have term limits here in South Dakota for people that go to Congress in DC, and we are not honoring them. So we just need to make sure we honor what we have here in South Dakota, that we make sure we don't gamble with our Constitution thinking not 35 states are going to come on board, because yes, our country is falling apart. Our Constitution is hanging on by a thread. But that's what we have. And I'm not going to take that gamble with a convention of states. I vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Aylward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this resolution today. I find it kind of interesting when you get out to Pier here to the Capitol, and when this resolution comes up, you usually have three groups of people. You have federal supremacists that believe that everything the Fed does is fine and dandy, and we're supposed to sit here and fall in line with it. You have state nullifiers, which I am. Then you have Article 5ers, which I am as well. The thing that frustrates me is we have the two groups, the state nullifiers, which Jefferson and Madison were, they spoke of nullification, interposition. They spoke to that as being a tool for us to fight back against tyrannical stuff from the federal government or situations like we have here today, where we're $36 trillion in debt. And then you have the Article 5 group, where we're also trying to fight back against an out of control federal government where we have a bad situation. The thing I get frustrated with is why these two groups don't come together. We both hold Madison and a lot of the other drafters to a high standard, but yet we sit here and we bicker back and forth when at the end of the day, we have the same goal in mind. And I hope we can come together on this to move this forward some more, because we do have the same goal in mind. I think we just need to, maybe think more about Madison and Jefferson and some of the drafters and why they had the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights and Article 5. They put it there for a reason, so I hope we can get on board with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further remarks, Representative Greenfield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I can only speak from personal experience, and maybe this is a homely example, but when I was a teacher, we wanted a raise in our insurance. The minute we opened up the subject of insurance, everything was fair game. As a result, even though we thought we were going to get a raise, we lost our full insurance. Because not only was it open to us, but it was open to everybody else to have input. So I just want you to be aware of that. And many times my hunters that come in say, you know, you South Dakotans are too trusting. Trust people at their word. I don't think we can do that in this day and age anymore. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on HJR 502. Does any member wish to speak before Representative Jorgensen speaks for a second time? Representative Jensen.
As you've already received on your desk, or in caucus, a colored sheet that actually portrays a who's who of some of our most famous people. Pete Hegseth, new Secretary of Defense, Vivek Ramaswamy, Speaker of the House, J.D. Vance, and so on. But I won't go over that list again. These are all people that do support the Convention of States. In April 14th, 2017, Common Cause, no conservative group, issued the following press release. The undersigned organization strongly urged state legislatures to oppose efforts to pass a resolution to call for a constitutional convention. Who are some of these far-left groups? ACLU of Colorado, our marijuana state next door. AFL-CIO, American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, the Brennan Center for Justice, Center for American Progress, Center for Media and Democracy, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, Common Cause, Communication Workers of America, Daily COS, Democracy 21, Emily's List, Greenpeace USA, League of Women Voters of the United States, National Association of Social Workers, North Dakota AFL-CIO, Oklahoma AFL-CIO, Planned Parenthood of Southern New England, National Education Association, Service Employees International Union, South Dakota AFL-CIO, United Work Food and Commercial Workers, Wisconsin AFL-CIO, Wyoming AFL-CIO. You know all these leftist groups are crying out against COS?
State your point.
Mr. Speaker, point of order. I believe it is vilifying left organizations, and that is unbecoming and against decorum.
Representative Jensen.
Thank you,
Please
Mr.
continue.
And lastly, what I'm saying is, you know, all these leftist groups are crying out against COS. They're saying, how dare you take away our control of Congress. How dare you? Please vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on SJR 502? Any further remarks? Would any member wish to speak before Representative Jorgensen speaks for a second time? Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just going to provide some quotes to finish up my part. During April 1788, our first U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Jay wrote that another convention would run an extravagant risk. In Federalist number 49, James Madison said a convention is neither proper nor effective to restrain government when it encroaches. In his November 2nd, 1788 letter to Tuberville, Madison said he trembled at the prospect of a second convention, and if there were an Article 5 convention, the most violent partisans and individuals of insidious views would strive to be delegates and would have a dangerous opportunity of sapping the very foundations of the fabric of our country. In Federalist number 85, the last paragraph, Hamilton said he dreads the consequences of another convention because the enemies of the Constitution want to get rid of it. Justice Arthur Goldberg said in his 1986 editorial in the Miami Herald that it cannot be denied that the Philadelphia Convention of 1787 broke every restraint intended to limit its power and agenda, and any attempt at limiting the agenda at an Article 5, he was referring to an Article 5 convention, would almost certainly be unenforceable. Chief Justice Berger, in his June 1988 letter to Phyllis Schlafly, said there is no effective way to limit or muzzle the actions of a constitutional convention after a convention is convened. It will be too late to stop the convention if we don't like its agenda. A new convention could plunge our nation into constitutional confusion and confrontation at every turn. So I just want to reiterate that I think it'd be very dangerous to open up our Constitution and just to take that chance. I think it's a good document. I do think that there needs to be changes, but I don't think opening the Constitution is prudent. So thank you for your time, and I encourage you to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on SJR 502? Any further remarks? Representative Heineman in closing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll keep this brief. The idea that our Constitution is good now, why change it? You're obviously referring to the original Constitution. Today, the Constitution we live under has been interpreted by the court in approximately 3,000 pages of rulings, many of which we don't or even like or we disagree with. This is the Constitution under which we live today. The way to fix this is call a convention of states to limit the power of the federal government. For example, the Department of Energy. It's not really constitutional, but the Supreme Court invented authority for it under the Commerce Clause. We need to pass an amendment removing all authority for the federal government to be involved in energy and return that power to the states. That's one example. The DOE is another one that Trump just addressed here just the other day. Congress, we don't want Congress involved in this. We just want to call a convention. We set the rules. The legislators set the rules. If you don't like the results that come out of the convention of states, don't ratify the amendments. 38 states are required to ratify that. So all the ideas of runaway conventions, constitutional conventions, et cetera, it has to be ratified by 38 of the states. That's a very high bar. In fact, the fact is, the state legislatures are our nation's last line of defense against an overreaching federal government. That's us. It's time for us to use Article 5 power. History will remember us one way or another. We either be remembered as the generation that finally succumbed completely to federal tyranny, or the generation who stood and defended the torch of liberty when it was flickering dangerously low? As Ronald Reagan said, you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. Will we preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth? Or will we sentence them to take the first step into 1,000 years of darkness? If we fail, at least let our children and our children's children say of us, we justified our brief moment here. We did all that we could be done. I urge you to vote green. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of SJR 502. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members will proceed to vote. We'll try once more for the doctor of the day. Is the doctor of the day in the gallery? Well, our doctor of the day today is Stefan Schroeder, MD. Dr. Schroeder practiced family medicine in Miller for 35 years. He received his medical degree from the University of Minnesota School of Medicine and completed his residency at the Hennepin County Medical Center. Dr. Schroeder currently serves as the medical director of the South Dakota Foundation for Medical Care, an organization that focuses on improving quality healthcare in our state. He treated inmates in the South Dakota prison system from 2015 through 2023. Dr. Schroeder is currently the medical director for Highmore Health Nursing Home in Highmore. Please join me in thanking Dr. Schroeder for being our doctor of the day.
Gosh votes aye. Gosh votes nay. Mulder votes aye. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
The clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were ayes 29, nays 38, excused 1.
Senate Joint Resolution 502, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect, is hereby declared lost.
Well, hello, COS supporters, and welcome back to COS Live. You've been watching debate on South Dakota House in consideration of our Article 5 Convention of States Resolution, SJR 502. Unfortunately, the vote was 29-38, meaning our resolution failed on the House. In just a few moments, we're hoping to have Deanna Beckett, Regional Director with Convention of States Action, to join us, and she's going to give us some reaction to what happened in the House today. In just a moment, she'll be joining us just to get you caught up. Rita Peters is not able to join today, so it's just me holding down the fort for this edition of COS Live. Again, my name is Andrew Lusch. So the South Dakota Senate passed our resolution, and then it went over to the House for consideration. There was a committee vote yesterday where it was favorable, and then it was sent over to a full floor vote today, and it appears that we did not get the necessary votes to for South Dakota to become the 20th state to pass the Article 5, the COS resolution. So we are still waiting for Deanna Beckett to join us, and we looks like we do have Deanna. Deanna, it is great for you to be with us. I'm so sorry that we're not that we didn't pass today and South Dakota didn't become state number 20. Can I just get your immediate reaction to how the vote turned out?
Well, we are bummed, and I apologize for noise in the background because we were just right outside the gallery. Disappointing, but the work we did was so valuable. They knew we were here. They heard from us, and we're looking to. It's hard. It's hard to comment on a loss when we've gotten to past step 3. But we will keep fighting and we will keep going.
Well, Deanna, I just got to say that the grassroots across the nation have been with you this entire time. You're in your home state right now. We're hoping for South Dakota, your home state, to be number 20. But I mean, like you said, it's just been incredible work, just where you've come this year, considering, years previous, how South Dakota we just seemed to get shut down at every turn. And this year we thought we had it in the bag. Even though we didn't have a victory today, who do you want to highlight as helping COS South Dakota get this far this year?
Well, we had Rick Santorum on the ground Sunday night into Monday, and he actually stayed through Monday afternoon and evening, so we were able to get him in front of quite a few people. And I took a picture of the board, and I'll go review it to see who our yeses were that we were able to flip. And then, of course, Mark was on the ground until about, I think his plane actually lifts off in 10 minutes, but he was in the Capitol here for up until about an hour ago. So a lot of that, of course, we've got a couple of lobbyists that, kudos to them. They brought energy and excitement and enthusiasm to our work as well.
All right, Deanna. So what's next? I know we're dead in South Dakota right now, but that's not the end of the story. So what do we do next?
In South Dakota, we'll be sending out thank yous to our supporters. Of course, that is our kind of our go-to next step, and because we want to acknowledge our peers, our champions, and we had quite a few champions that stood up for us today. From here in the Wild West region, of course, we've got activity going on in Kansas and Wyoming, and active. And then, of course, we've got a few other things that are going on in our states. But contact your legislator. So if you're in South Dakota, contact your legislator. If they voted no, thank them for their consideration, and ask them why, and bring them education.
Deanna, just before we let you go, what's your call to action to all the viewers, and especially those in South Dakota? What's your call to action right now?
Again, build those relationships with those legislators. That is what we are seeing that makes a huge difference. It's not a sprint. This is a marathon. And Shirley, our state director here in South Dakota, has been doing this for 10 years. This is year 10. We were hoping to pass year 10 with the 100th legislative session here in South Dakota, but it sometimes takes a little bit longer for developing those relationships, and we're going to keep going. Call to action, again, get in front of those legislators, come alongside them, not hold their hands, but get involved in what their issues are. Testify for them. We've had I've seen lots of friends here in South Dakota ask on their Facebook pages, I need people to testify for me. So sign up for testimony. Get involved in their issues right now, from now until the end of session. That's where we're going to make a difference, is being visible.
Well, Deanna, you have just been doing amazing work the last several weeks. And even before this, getting to this point, just crisscrossing your region, going to South Dakota, Wyoming, and all over the place in the Wild West region. I mean, it's just so commendable what you and your grassroots have done and what your teams have done. I'm sorry that it wasn't the victory that we wanted, but you know what? We have more information now, who we got to work on, and we're going to come back even stronger. And that's what we do as a grassroots organization. We come back stronger each year until we get final passage. And, we pushed the ball down the court this year further than we've gotten before. So it's exciting to see what's on the horizon for COS South Dakota. And I know that under your leadership and under the leadership of your grassroots, we're going to get there. So thank you for being here.
Amen. Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Unfortunately, we did not pass in South Dakota. The House bill failed, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the story. We're going to come back again, and we're going to get final passage, because we have a country to save. We have a job to do. And this is the only way that we can truly rein in the federal government. This is the only way that we're ever going to see term limits put on elected officials. They're never going to put term limits on themselves. This is the only way that we're going to end federal abuses of power. So we're going to come back even stronger than before. We have more states to cover, more legislative action to cover coming up in the future. We're not done for the year, so you're going to have to come back for our next edition of COS Live. Go to conventionofstates.com/COS Live, bookmark that page, and make sure that you get notifications anytime that we go live with legislative hearings or Senate or House action. With that, we're going to end today's broadcast. Thanks for tuning in. We got a country to save, so it's time to get back to work.